Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans turn into rock stars every single day. You can learn more about what Operation Encore is doing by going over to their website at www.operationencore.org. That is www.operationencore.org. If you can give them a hand, just click that little donate button or follow all of their social medias and learn exactly what they are doing to change the lives of our veterans every single day. Hey, welcome everybody to Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room. Today I have got Brady Falk. He is a dog trainer, and this is, anybody who knows me knows I love the working dog class. I'm a big fan of hunting and everything else. So I've been looking forward to this for a few minutes now. Brady is a dedicated dog trainer with a passion for empowering puppies, dogs, and their owners to achieve greater success and harmony at their home and around town. With years of hands-on experience, he's honed his skills in canine behavior, obedience, emotional support, and service dog training. Brady firmly believes that a well-trained dog is a happy and confident dog, and his mission is to empower dog owners with the knowledge and tools to create a peaceful and loving home themselves. Let's welcome Brady to the show. How's it going, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing really good. I just want to let everyone know who's listening right now. If you have a dog and you want them just to listen maybe a little bit better, you're in the right place. But if you have a dog and you want them not to just listen better, you want a working dog. You want a dog who can help you out around the house, maybe get a water bottle from a fridge or whatever it may be. I want you to know that you're also in the right place. So if you catch yourself nodding while you're listening to it, just bear with us. We're going to go through some stuff and I'm excited to share with you. Congratulations for being here, everyone.
Oh man, I've changed my focus now. Now I want my dog to go get me a beer. I have changed that focus.
Yeah, the first time's the funniest because they pop it with their teeth sometimes, and then there's beer everywhere. Then you got to mop. So I got stories, but it's fun.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you give everybody a quick little background before we dig into the info of how you became interested in dogs and kind of how you grew up and where you're from.
Yeah, so I really help empower puppies, dogs, and their owners to have more success at home and around town while having fun while doing it. So I'm going to share about my story. Is it probably going to take me maybe 10, 15 minutes to go into my background and my story? I just want to give you a little time frame. And before I do, I want to go over the difference between active and passive learning because I think it's really, really important in dog training and with us. Is that okay if I go over that real quick?
Go for it.
So they did a study and they showed the difference between an animal who is conditioned just with rote conditioning, just by doing something over and over again, by moving their finger up and down, right? It takes 300 to 400 repetitions to create this new behavior to where it's like wired into the brain. They did this experiment another way where they made it more fun. They made it more playful. They got more movement, more emotions out of it. And it took 30 to 40 repetitions to condition the new behavior because you have to remember what fires together wires together. So during this time, I'm gonna get you to move around sometimes. I reach up, I pat myself on the back, I tell myself good job often. It's important that we're staying active. You can take down notes as I'm talking too. I'm gonna share a couple tidbits from my dream program, how I got my dog to be my dream dog, and how we started there. I'm gonna share the my lowest points too, my rock bottom, you know. So that is very, very important, as well as understanding that the average dog can learn 165 words. And that's Chihuahuas, Pomeranians, German Shepherds, Border Collies. So if you're sitting here thinking, like, my dog could never do this, I just want to tell you that if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I'm here to show you that there are some ways that maybe your dog can learn 20 to 30 new words. And for them, it's really not that much space in their brain. And I'm sure you could handle it too. And it's a fun bonding process as well. So I just want to let you guys know that we're going to be doing some learning during this time. And it'll probably take me I think this podcast will go for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so, just so you know how long you'll be listening for.
Awesome. Can't wait, man.
Yeah. So I'll dive right into it, right? How I got started was I grew up with animals. I'm the oldest of six. We grew up having dogs all the time, and these dogs didn't always make it the entire time with us. Meaning, some of them passed away from getting eaten by coyotes. Um, one of them, one of them passed away because we lost them. Some of them we had to rehome because they were just a little bit too much for my family to handle. One of them, Sunday, she did make it until I believe she lived 15 years. So that was the longest one. She passed away 2 years ago. But most of my life, these dogs were just wild animals. And I would get home from school. My mom would say the dogs ran away again. And we'd have to go like follow the trash cans that had been knocked over and like pick up the diapers and the trash bags and all the stuff they had eaten. And hopefully they weren't caught by the pound or the animal rescue, right? And we would take them back home. We would board up the fence where they broke out or cover up the hole. And we would do this at least once or twice a week. It was kind of ridiculous. So I got my first dog at 21. I don't know if anyone else had dogs like that, but I thought that was just normal, right? But I thought I could still do better than my parents. So when I was 21 years old, 22, I got my first puppy. I got an Australian Shepherd puppy. And I got a dog who matched my needs at the time. I had a lot of energy. I enjoyed running and being active. I want to take him to all the restaurants, all the places. I had all these big plans for him. And as we got into it, his name is Bumblebee. He's got a lot of energy. His butt wiggles kind of fast, reminded me of a bumblebee. And as we got into it, he was great. And I got like the most expensive food, and I would let him sleep in my bed, and I would take him on like runs. I would take him on like a 2 mile run in the morning, 2 mile run at night, or walk runs, right? Depending on like how we were feeling that day. And even with all of those things, I remember I got my dad a Father's Day present. It was inside of a box, inside of a box, inside of a box. It was this leather duffel bag. It was this nice. I didn't think about it, but this dude's nose is really good, and he smelt that leather, and he tore through all three of those boxes and got to this thing, and I just left him out of my room. And I came home and I was like, goodness. And then one of my books one day got ripped up, and it was my Tim Ferriss Tools of Titans book. I had just gotten it. The first 30 pages were ripped out, and I was like, oh my gosh, you couldn't rip the old book? Like, why'd you got to pick the new book? Like, part of the door and the carpet were chewed, and I was like, well, there goes my deposit. And I got to really a point to like, I was like, I got to do something about this, because even though I'm giving you the best stuff and the best life and what I think it is, there's still things that you don't know how not to do, right? Accidents. I came home one day and there was like 4 piles of poop, and he had a bone in there, and he pooped on top of the bone too. And I'm like, man, like, right? Have you ever been there, Donald?
Yes, I'm thinking back of all the dogs that I've had that are really similar to this, and I'll share a real quick story with one of the dogs that we had. I felt so embarrassed. So we had 2 dogs. We had a Dalmatian that I think he was autistic because he just never did anything. He just sat there and was like really shy and never caused any problems. And then I had a Chihuahua that was like the horniest dog I've ever seen in my life. And
He's humping
we had some
everything.
friends come over, and they asked if they could bring their dog. I said, sure. It was a nice day. We were in Germany. So we put all the dogs out on the balcony, and I look over, and my Dalmatian has cornered their German Shepherd and just standing there looking at it, when all of a sudden the Chihuahua jumps up on its hind legs and is humping at the same time, walking towards this dog. And the Dalmatian just stands there like daring the German Shepherd to move while the Chihuahua is humping it. And I felt so embarrassed, man. When they took their dog home, I felt like I definitely owed them some nights at the spa for the dog to be clean, because it was so horrible. But that's just the way that dog was.
Oh man, that sounds coordinated by them too. Like,
It does.
they
I've never
rehearsed
seen
that.
it. That Dalmatian, I had him trained so like when he got in trouble, I just put him in the corner. and he would sit in the corner and wait for me to tell him that he could get out, and he'd look back at me, and he just sat there until I would give him the command that he could get out, and that's just the way he was. Very mellow, very laid back.
Yeah.
Awesome dog. His name was Spock. One of my favorite dogs. The Chihuahua, just for the record, was my wife's.
I love it. Yeah, you probably have lots of memories come back to you as we talk about these things. It does to me sometimes. Like I have in this new puppy too, and I'll get back to my origin story, but she set up also a planned attack. She has her sister. She was hanging out with her sister, and I wasn't there. And her sister had a bully stick, and she wanted it. And she's not the type to go bully someone and take something from it. She's a little bit smarter than that. She
Yeah.
knows her sister's obsessed with her. And so she went and found a toy and started playing with this toy by herself, which got her sister's attention. And my friends are like, 10 out of 10 times, she's going to drop whatever it is and she's going to go chase her sister or get the toy. So our dog, Curiosity is her name. She took the toy and threw it. The other dog went and got it, and she went and took the bully stick. And like they said, they did it multiple times. And every single time Nora fell for it. And then Nora would just pout. And she's like, oh, can I have it back? These dogs are smarter than you think. You just got to learn how to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, I love it. So yeah, that was the next thing I had to learn. I had to go find a mentor who could teach me how to communicate with these dogs. I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast actually. He had on a woman. Her name is Susan Garrett. She's a 30+ time world agility champion. She's brilliant. I recommend her to everyone and anyone. And I enrolled in her programs. I spent thousands of dollars. I realized if I was going to pay for it in my deposit and fixing things and buying new presents, I might as well pay for it in something that's going to be helpful for us, right? An investment into our future. So I invested in a lot of her programs and bought some books too. Karen Pryor, Don't Shoot the Dog, is brilliant. Susan has a book, Rough Love. There's so many great books out there that you could read too. But the real thing is I started practicing, right? So like actually getting the physical work in and like building the repetitions, because sometimes you read things and it's not exactly, life doesn't always go how the book goes or how the teacher teaches, you got to learn how to overcome these obstacles and stuff. So as I continue to get better, there are still obstacles that showed up along the way. And I just got better at handling those obstacles and realizing that dog training, I only use two principles. I use classical conditioning, I got some balloons, and operant conditioning. Do you know why that happens?
No, I've never seen it before in my life.
Oh man,
I
that's
think
so
it's
funny.
neat though. Where did that come from?
I don't know. Sometimes it happens on my Zoom calls. I thought I was safe here, but I don't know. No, it's funny.
Your dog has learned some new tricks that you didn't know about. He's sending you a gift.
You gotta be careful, man. These guys their brain's always learning. That's the thing about dogs, is they're like, whether you're there or not, they're always learning. You got to be aware of that. But yeah, so classical operant conditioning, right? Two very simple principles. We'll talk about those later. But as I got better at that, man, it was funny. There's always stuff that comes up. There's this Wi-Fi cable that after my dog was like about a year old, he started eating the Wi-Fi cable, and I tried all sorts of stuff, right? I like put sriracha on that thing. Like I tried to keep him away for it. I tried to board up the walls next to it. It was wild. But I finally got him to stop chewing on it just by teaching him just to one, chew on a bone. I got him a bone that would last a little bit longer. The problem is he would eat his bone like after like an hour, and then he would get bored. And then I stopped leaving him there as long too. But anywho, I went through so many different obstacles, and some of these things you've got to learn. Some problems you just ignore and you just love your dog anyways. Some problems you manage, and then some things you train new behaviors for. And you got to use kind of a combination of these things. So as I did this, I started helping friends and family, and then they referred me to more and more people. I helped an animal rescue who helps abused and neglected animals. They're called Farm Animal Refuge. There is a pig there. Her name is Cashew. There is a pig there. And she was extremely fearful of animals, of other pigs. She kind of was just like on her own. And I started just doing some basic animal training with her, like I said, classical operant conditioning kind of. And we were able to teach her to crawl using a target stick, to sit, to lay down. We could pet her, and then eventually I taught her after a year how to paint. And now she's raised over, I think, over $5,000 selling her paintings in little auctions to their
Awesome.
community. So, yeah, this stuff can go way further than you think it can. And I'm here to expose people to like maybe a box they didn't know was even available.
That is awesome, man. I mean, I never even thought about teaching a dog to paint or anything. You know, I've seen some of the stuff that you talked about, you know, people sending their dog to get a soda or something out of the fridge, or, you know, general behavior type stuff. And I've seen some of the canine handlers from my military experience too, you know, show what their dogs are capable of as well. But I can't imagine, you know, why, just like you said, why would you continue to go down a path that's going to be toxic? You know, at some point you're going to get tired of the dog doing the wrong things. You're then going to be lazy and blame the dog. And then next thing you know, the dog's either being sold, dumped, or something else, you know, all because the problem really wasn't the dog. The problem was taking the animal and putting it in an environment and not training it to understand its environment. At least that's what it seems like to me. And I've seen a lot of people that do this, and I've had a lot of family members that said, "Hey, we're getting a new dog," and I'm thinking there should be a law against this.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what is where do we begin? I mean, obviously the first step is as a puppy, you know, doing some obedience training and that type stuff. Is that usually where you recommend, or do you recommend for the owners to get some training before they even start training the dog?
Great. These are great questions, and I want to just double down. I think everyone should get a dog before they can have kids because you learn a lot. Like the first thing I tell people, you're asking like, what's the first thing you do with a puppy? Is you connect and you appreciate their world. You do this because each dog's a little bit different. I think there's 5 different categories of dogs, and I can't have time to share all the details with you, but some dogs, they're a little bit more movement, they get into stuff. Some dogs, they're a little bit more quiet and reserved. Some dogs love people more. And there's a little bit different types. You just connect and you appreciate their world. And in that, the first relationship test truly is potty training and sleeping through the night. Like those are
Yeah.
the first 2 things I help people with every single time is like, are you sleeping? Like, how are you sleeping at night? And like, they'll tell me, they're like, oh man, it's terrible. Like this dog cannot sleep through the night. And so we just have to take him and put him in our bed. And I was like, I've been there. I did the same thing.
Yeah.
It's obtainable, but it's not sustainable. Cause I'm like, what do you really want them to do? And like, well, we don't really have room in our bed. We'd rather them like sleep on their bed or like in their crate in like another room because like we want our own space. And I was like, okay, like let's put together a plan to get there. So
Yeah.
it- getting training before dog training would be like ultimately ideal, but in reality, most people aren't going to do that.
They're not.
Um, But the thing is, the thing is about dogs, you have them for at most maybe like 20 years, and that's like really, really good. Most people maybe will get to 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
So you'll have multiple dogs throughout your life. So the idea is if you can learn a few things this time and a few things next time, and like just keep stacking things as you go, the learning always continues. So
Yeah.
keep planting trees.
Before we go too far, I want to show you my dog that, and
Okay.
this has been my, I mean, I didn't even know it, but this has been my dream dog, and I would never change her for any other thing. So let me show her real quick.
Please.
Share screen. So this is little Ann. If I'm sure anybody that's familiar with dogs is familiar with the show the Where the Red Fern Grows. And
Great,
all right.
great movie.
So this is her when we were first teaching her about the world of squirrels and how to help me find them. And so this was her after. So when I got her, I got her because I was dealing with PTSD and depression and everything else, and I owned a trucking company. So I was in a truck for 6 weeks at a time, and she was an accident. My son and his fiance had their dog in their yard outside, and a stray dog came along and said, you look like you're ready. So they had 13 puppies, and
13.
yeah, 13 puppies. And
Okay.
he sent me pictures of them. I picked one, and when I got back, I picked her up, and she was in the truck with me everywhere I went, whether I was in the semi or at home, for the
Nice.
first 3 years of her life, right? And I honestly don't know what type of um, dog she is. I'm pretty sure that she is a um, some sort of mix, black cur mix, is what I like to think she is. But this is little Ann, and she has became my little emotional support dog. She everywhere I go, she goes. Even up
Wow.
here as I'm podcasting, she's got her own little spot next to me. So
Wow. I love it. Yeah, I want to compliment you on your language too. As you were saying that, you said, I taught her how to find the squirrels,
yeah, yeah,
and dogs are very good at that. So if you teach them how to find it and then to like be still and watch them rather than to chase them, you're like staying ahead of the curve instead of thinking stop, stop, stop. So I'm very proud of you for that. Very good recognition.
yeah. She is. She has got an amazing nose, you
Yeah.
know, and that is another thing from the black cur mix breed. You know, anybody that follows that breed knows it's a working class dog that was just mixed bred a long, long time ago. And now any dog that looks like a boxer that's a mix, people kind of assume that's what it is, whether it really is or not. But a lot of her personality traits. I mean, if she's not around people, she's very depressed, and that's a trait. If she's not doing something fun, interesting, she's restless, and her other hobby is eating. So that's everything about little Ann.
Oh man, she's living a good life. I'm sure
Oh,
she gets lots of stuff with you too.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, all the way down to when we sleep. You know, she sleeps in the same bed as I do, and man, if I get up, she gets up. She loves to sleep underneath the covers. Um, I don't fly anymore because if I go anywhere, I don't board her. I I had a when I got her, I thought what I needed was a service dog, and
Mhm.
what I really learned is I just needed a really good friend, you know, and somebody that was loyal and that I could trust. And she has been all of that and more. So
I love that. And I love that shift. That's what most people need is that loyalty, that friend, that unconditional love where you come home and they're there for you. And I think they really are life changing. They give you a purpose to like get up out of bed and to go for a walk and to make sure that this dog has food and to make
yeah,
sure it's good for them and they're growing and connected with people and they're feeling that love. I
yep,
think dogs have six needs. I think humans have needs too. You need the need to feel safe and
yep,
like certain about your environment. You got to have variety, like you pointed out. You got to be doing new things. You got to be growing in a sense and trying new things. You got to have love and connection. And you got to have that person. We need love in life. You got to have significance, which means
yep,
the feeling of being needed or wanted. And so the dog needs to have some sort of work to know that, like, oh, I'm part of this thing. Like, I'm a part of this thing. I'm not just like in my own world in a sense. They need that significance. And then they need to grow too. They need to learn new things. I firmly believe. Like my grandparents had a dog and she developed hot spots. And so they
hmm,
gave her like Benadryl and like different allergy stuff to help trying to fix that. And nothing worked. Like they went to the vet multiple times. The vet prescribed things and they're like, well, it's just her, right? I moved in with them for about 6 months. I started working with her most every single day and just teaching her simple stuff, just like how to go to your bed when like I tell you to, and how to stay there and stay there not because like I'm forcing you to, because if you stay there, I use grandma's rule. I was at my grandma's house. Grandma's rule. I don't know if you I don't know if your grandma had this, but my grandma did. My room had to be clean before I could go out and go play, or I had to eat all my vegetables before
yep,
I could go out and play, right? I had to do something that she wanted me to do. And she would ask me, like, well, how are you going to go play with your friends if you don't eat all your vegetables? And she's not telling me to eat my vegetables. She's just like, well, think about it. How are you going to do it? Like, that's the rule. You got to have your vegetables eaten before you play. And then my brain's just like, well, I really want to go play. So I'm going to eat my vegetables.
Yep. Yep.
So
You're absolutely right.
teaching her these same things. And within the 6 months, they were all the hot spots were gone. And all it was just a confidence thing, just giving her a little bit more certainty that she was safe. She was more predictability in the day. I took her to a few new places around town. I started taking her to just like little baseball fields where she could explore and sniff around. She was older. She was like 13, 14 years old. She's passed away now. But I do believe that like giving her all these things that I just kind of mentioned were the reason why she was able to um, truthfully overcome these hotspots. And I'm not saying go talk to your vet. I'm not a veterinarian,
Yeah.
but I believe that building confidence and giving them these things can help overcome a lot of different things that maybe you're not thinking about yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know of a lot of programs out there, and there's one particularly that I really like because I like the way that they do things, and it kind of related to what we were just talking about a minute ago. There's an
Yeah.
organization out there called 22 Mohawks that has a dog program. Um, they help with the local areas that have homeless dogs and a few breeders that also donate dogs. And what they will do is they will match the dog up with a veteran that is looking for a not any type of service dog or anything like that, but just looking for a companion. And
Mhm.
then what they do is there's a program that they have to go through. They dog belongs to 22 Mohawks all the way up until the point that they graduate their training classes with the veteran. So they'll find a local pet trainer like yourself or um, something in that local area, and they'll pay for all the lessons from teaching the owner all the way to teaching the dog the basic sit, stay, go to the bathroom in the right places training. And they give them all the stuff they need, leashes and collars and pet dishes and all that type of stuff. And then once all they've graduated, then they sign the ownership over to the veteran. And it's a twofold program that's helping out the local canine areas, like the kennels and stuff. It's helping with bringing people in that do have reputable breeders and gives them the ability to donate and be a part of stuff too, and it's a great program. So I don't know if have you ever seen programs like that?
I love this. I love this so much. And before we dive into, because we're going to talk about this for a little bit, did you interview Dave Albin? Have you had him on your show?
I have.
Okay, Dave Albin's a close friend of mine. I love Tony Robbins. I'm part of the fire team, so I've helped build fires. I never built one with Dave yet because he was a little bit before my time. I started in 2019, and yet him and I are coming up with an idea. And I had never heard of the program like this before, but this was kind of their same idea. Like I can go help rescue a dog, and then we can pair him with the veteran because what Dave wants to do now is he wants to put on Operation Do No Harm, and what
Okay.
this is fire walks specifically for veterans.
Oh, know what? I have not had him on my show. I'm sorry.
Oh no?
The founder from 22 Mohawks, his name is also Dave, and I was getting the
Oh
two
wow,
mixed up. I'm sorry.
that was funny. Well, we're gonna set up something with Dave too, because I think you guys would really combine too, because this same idea, people need the skills in order to overcome obstacles and challenges in your life, right? A lot of it is psychology.
Yeah.
And being able to walk on fire and cross these things and being able to anchor it to a medallion and then being able to pair someone up with a dog and have them go through that process of taking care of a dog and feeding them and training them and growing with them and taking them places and
Yeah.
having that support for them, I feel like would be just life changing to so many people's lives.
Yeah.
And I
I
love
have
that this
seen it.
organization already exists.
Yeah, I have seen it. They're up north. I believe in Connecticut is where they're at, but they will hire a dog transporter to pick up the dog and take it to the veteran if that veteran's not in the local area.
Uh-huh.
Um, they are currently working with a veteran friend of mine. His name's Joel, and he's got some um, seeing issues, and he's
Mhm.
also got Parkinson's disease, and so his balance and stuff is getting a little off. And so they're working with him to get a dog that's the right size, right height, that can just help him kind of stabilize himself as he's walking and
Yeah.
keep his balance. And so I'm seeing the results just, in front of me. I link those two up, and it's gone from there. So, but I love programs like that.
Yeah, and there's so many amazing dogs and rescues. I just rescued one um, right before December 1st, right? I went and picked her up, and I'm taking her through a 3-month program, and then I'm gonna rehome her. And I think there's just so much opportunities to take very amazing dogs and pair them with people who would also benefit greatly from them.
Yeah.
I think
No.
it's yeah, if you can get us in another conversation with them,
Oh,
I would
absolutely.
love to
Yeah,
see
that's
how I
too
can
easy.
help with
Yeah,
that.
I can make that happen. Yeah,
I
absolutely,
love it.
man. So,
I love it. I love it.
um, let me ask you this: what is the best way to start this program? So, let's say you have a owner that reaches out to you.
Uh-huh.
Um, you have a conversation with them, and they've got a problemed dog. Is I've seen, and I've been kind of skeptical about this, but I've seen a lot of online dog training, where it's like virtual training. Is that
Mhm.
really an effective method, or is it and I've seen other trainers that says, okay, I need to have your dog for 3 weeks. I actually had somebody reach out to me and was going to train my dog to be a service dog for me, but he had to take her for 3 weeks. And I said, well, nope. I said, I don't need
Yeah.
a service dog, and I'm not, I can't go without being around her for 3 weeks. So that won't work either. But
Mm.
what is the best method? I mean, I've always thought of dog training as somebody that finds locally somebody and is going through classes with them. Is that the best method, or is some of these other options truly effective?
They are all they are all effective. I learned a lot at first by online learning, but I'm
Mhm.
more of that type of person. I can visualize and I can like hear things really well, and that's the type of learning. Some more people are feeling kinesthetic and they got to be in a course and do that thing
Mhm.
with someone there. And I did that too with people. I think a combination is the best route. I think all
Okay.
the information is the same. Like if you go really dive into the books, you could find a lot of the stuff, but it's going to take you a little bit longer. You could go and search through thousands of hours of videos online and you'd find it eventually, right? Or you could pay someone who's kind of already done all that and just take a shortcut. But each person's route is a little bit different depending on what difficulty they want to turn their knob to, you know?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
the you don't have to have a board and train. Like I typically, so I've changed my program many times as I've done this. And during COVID, I did do a lot of online programs, and you have to be able to communicate really effectively.
Mhm.
And um, because dog training, there's so many details. Like if I ask you if you have all the ingredients to make a cake, but you forgot to print out the recipe, if you just combine everything in a bowl and put it in the oven, do you get a cake?
No.
You don't. You gotta do the right order and the right sequence.
Yeah.
It's very important, and dog training is the same exact way. So, if you can get someone to understand the importance of sequence first, and just taking a breath in between things that you do and just giving just a second to think about things, you still want to the next thing is you wanna analyze things, but you don't wanna analyze things. You don't wanna
Right.
dive too deep because then you just get into this paralysis by analysis, and it's good to try, see how things are going, and then adjust, right? And then you have someone you go to and be like, this is what I'm doing, this is the results I'm getting. And then I say, okay, what do you want? And then, okay, this is like how you should do to get there.
Okay.
And that back and forth conversation is very important um, to me because I think that's where a lot of the growth happens. Because I'm not someone's guru. I can't train everyone's dog. If I do a board and train for 3 weeks, I can do a lot and set a good foundation. And like
Mhm.
I can condition it over and over again until it sticks, which is it's conditioning a lot of the things. And then I still need you to understand when you run into obstacles and challenges to use these two principles, classical and operant conditioning, grandma's rule and sequence, and be able to overcome these things and feel the confidence that you can. And sometimes with board and trains with people and their dogs, sometimes my clients also don't like to leave their dogs for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And it is a very interesting thing because dogs pick up on energy too. So I'd imagine that their dog probably has some separation. They don't like to be separated from their owner. And it's important that dogs do have that confidence in themselves. They have their own self esteem. It's not dependent on someone. They can summon this whenever they need to. And so, working with people with the humans part, I love working with humans too. I've studied NLP and I've done some applied behavioral analysis like ABA therapy. And combining these two worlds to help these people overcome their own emotions as their dogs overcoming things too allows just for an ecology that works so much more efficiently.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
anywho, I
I
think you
never
should buy
thought about it
all of
that way.
it.
I never thought about it that way, but it is true because even Anne, if I'm not around, and she's also attached to my mom. I help take care of my mom as well, and
Huh?
if she's not attached, if she's not around them, and she definitely has anxiety, and so when I come home from work, she knows about what time, and she's sitting at the door waiting for me to when I get there, and when I first leave, she whines and she don't like I said, she don't like being by herself. So when I leave, I'll open up my mom's door and she'll go from my bed into my mom's room and sleep with her for a while. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, she definitely has that same anxiety from being separated from me. And it probably like you said, she does sense my energy that I don't like leaving her, and we've been in this semi truck for years together,
Yeah.
so all that's been built. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And I just want to clarify too, your culture is your culture. My job is just to align with your culture
Mhm.
and help you get whatever your result is. So, as I say this, is there anything that you do want to add to your current relationship with your dog?
So for me, there's a couple things that she doesn't do very well that I have struggled with. Um, One is she will respond by command, but sometimes not the first time.
Okay.
So it's almost like I have subconsciously taught her that it takes me to say the same thing 3 times before she has to respond.
Hmm.
She is off leash trained, and I
Nice.
can do that. I can take her to public places with no issues. For
Awesome.
the most part, depending on how encouraged the person is, she will not jump up on them or anything. But if the other person's really excited, then it makes her even more excited, and she will jump up on them. But
Yeah.
other than that, you know, she's learning to sit and stay, and she'll stay for a while, and then squirrel, and she'll she'll wander off if I walk away or whatever. But she does pretty good with all that stuff, and she can shake, do high fives, lay down, crawl, and she's definitely 100% housebroken.
Mhm.
And so, I would definitely love for her to be able to go get me something out of the fridge. So we could definitely talk about that too.
I love it. I love it. You're doing so good. First off, I want to like tell you to reach your hand up, bend it, and pat yourself on the back. There you go. I don't
All
know the last
right.
time you told yourself good job. Yeah. That really is amazing, man. It's the reason why like people like you, I can already tell you're like an outstanding person. You do a lot of things. And my clients are typically outstanding people as well, and they'll have really good dogs, and they're like, Brady, I just want to like tweak these little tiny things, and I'm like, man, it's so cool because your dog's already. They're like, this is the best dog I've ever had, and like, there's still always things you can just be like, oh, I had this idea,
Absolutely.
um, and all getting a drink out of the fridge is you need them to be able to retrieve something,
Yep.
and then you need them to be able to play tug and to like tug on something to open the fridge.
Yep.
And then some dogs, they either pull the tug toy to shut it or they can jump up and put their paws on it and shut it too. And that's like the three parts of it. And so as you learn those three parts, you get to connect with your dog, you get to chunk them together, and then you get to put it on command. And oh yeah, it's brilliant. It's so much fun. Just to tell
So
you how my brain kind of works putting that
yeah,
together.
she loves. She does play fetch. We do play frisbee, and
Hmm.
she's great at catching and chasing stuff down. A lot of these came from the squirrel training that I was giving her.
Yeah.
So I would take,
Tell me about that.
yeah, I would take a dummy, a training dummy, and
Uh-huh.
it had ribbons on it, and I would soak it in squirrel scent, and I
Uh-huh.
would leave her in the house, and I would take it outside and drag it all around, and then I would hide it up in a tree. Sometimes backyard, sometimes front yard, and you could literally watch her nose follow the path of everywhere I drug it. And sometimes if the wind was blowing, it would confuse her just a little bit, and you'd see her
Uh-huh.
stop and she'd stick her nose up in the air, start scenting, and then she'd find it, and then she would go and jump up on the tree and stare up at the tree. But I wanted her to also be able to bark. That way I could hear her if I wasn't specifically there. And I
Mhm.
never was able to get her to do that. She would not jump up and bark at it. And I think
Okay.
some of that came from early time with me and her in the truck. She would bark and I would tell her to stop barking. And so I think that I have kind of confused her on now that it's okay to bark, and before I was
Uh-huh.
telling her not to bark. But
Uh-huh.
other than that, she does all that stuff. So and the frisbee, when she catches it, she'll bring it back, and I can either make her give it to me or we can play tug of war. She loves tug of war, and depending on whether she did what I wanted her to do right, I would either make her just give it to me and not play the tug of war, or if she did
Uh-huh.
do the task that I wanted her to do correctly, I would then play tug of war for a few minutes with her and then tell her to give it to me and we'd do it again.
Okay. Very, very good. You got like most all the components then, and you've already got a good understanding of how all this stuff works too. Maybe we do like a little live training session. That'd be kind of fun.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
or like put my skills to the test. But yeah, that's brilliant. I love what you did with the squirrel too. I haven't ever had that thought before, and now I'm definitely gonna go like get some squirrel scent and go practice some of that stuff more because it is leaders anticipate and followers react most of the time. So anticipating these challenges is very important.
Now that you say that, I think I actually have a video of her doing it. Um,
Nice.
Let me see
Yeah,
if I can
share
find
that.
it on Facebook real quick. Videos.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
But
Um, I
yeah. So those steps, how do you combine those steps then? Let's say that, Anne knows how to do all of those. How do I teach the sequence part of that?
oh man, I love this conversation. This is chaining. You want to chain the behavior together. And I like to use back chaining, and I use back chaining in my own personal life a lot. All back chaining means is you learn the last thing first, and then you work your way backwards. So you learn the last thing first, and then you learn the second to last thing, and then you learn the first to the last thing. And you build confidence moving towards that end goal. Most times when people do stuff, like if you're trying to memorize a script or something that you want to say, most people read the beginning part like 100 times. And by the time they finally feel confident, then they move on to the middle and then they never have time to memorize the end. And so they just got the beginning really good. And then the middle, they get less confident. And the end, they're even less confident now. And so you're
Okay.
just they're building towards uncertainty and I want to build towards confidence. So whatever I want them to that end piece, I'm going to build the best. And that end piece is the location that you want to bring the bottle to, right? So you need them to understand like how to go to their bed. And so it's just picking up the bottle and then bringing it to their bed. Pick up the bottle, bring it to your bed, and I give you a treat. Pick up the bottle, bring it to your bed. As you understand that, and then you can start increasing the distance and like maybe throwing the water bottle. Another thing you got to pay attention to is if they puncture the water bottle, you have to teach them some bite inhibition, right? That's another thing. I talked about that beer can exploding the first time, which is one way for a dog to learn, right? It's not. Um, there's other ways for the dog to learn without having to clean up your entire kitchen. I mopped and like wiping down the fridge. It was all over the place, and yeah. Um, but anywho, so that's the last piece of the puzzle. So then we're going to go to the second to last piece, the piece before that, right? Which so is shutting the fridge door. Um, what I do for that is I take a post-it note and I teach them to touch their nose to a post-it note, and then I put
Okay.
the Post-it note on top of the fridge. And so I open the fridge, and then they jump up to push their nose on, and it shuts the fridge. And then I open the fridge, and I do that again. Um, and then in between that is opening the fridge, right? That's kind of the beginning step.
Hmm.
And that step is playing tug. So I get them to play tug, and then I take this same tug toy and I attach it to the fridge, and then I say, "Get this thing." I say, and then they open it up, and then we've already practiced the retrieve and bringing it to the bed. And then they go back and they shut the fridge.
Okay.
Um, so that's kind of like how you piece it together, and then you put it all on one cue. Once you've done this for a little bit, right? This, like, I'm describing it very fast, but this takes like weeks of practicing, and if you don't have a lot of stuff, it takes even longer. But it's fun because the growth, the transformation is in that connection that you build during those times. Because I can take the toy and I can put it on the fridge because it's not there all the time. And he's like, "Oh, I know what we're about to do now. This is great." And
Yep.
so, like, just having that with your dog is so cool.
Okay. Well, I did find
That
that
makes sense.
video. We'll go ahead and I'll show it to you real quick.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, dang it. There it is. So she came out of the front. We started at the front house, and the toy is hid in the backyard.
Okay.
Find it. Find it. Find it. I drug it all around that area, all the way to the back. Find it. Where's that? Find it.
Wow. You got a good nose to find it with all this open
Find it.
space.
Get it. Get it. Get it. Get it. Well, I can't get her to bark. Get it. Get it, girl. Get it.
That's awesome. Way to go. It's almost not a bad thing if she doesn't get it, because then she's chasing all the squirrels.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be too.
But it is that is awesome. But it would be nice if you said get it and she did get that one too. Just to be able to have that separation in her brain as well.
Yeah.
But you've gone so far. That's so cool. Their noses are so amazing, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And hers, I mean, she smells stuff that I don't even see what it is that she's catching. She'll
Yeah.
she'll pick something up in the air, and man, she'll just stretch that head up, and you just see that nose going and sniffing. And I look around, I'm like, I don't know what you're smelling, but okay, you know.
And
And
it's so important to them too. I always stress to people, like, they got to smell the female as they're walking around, just to
yeah,
engage that whole part of their brain.
yeah, absolutely. And when I take her out in the woods with me, whether we're going hunting or just, I take her a lot of times when I'm just doing looking for areas to hunt, not necessarily going to hunt, potential deer areas and stuff like that. And I'll take her with me early in the season before we're even close to deer season. And then once I put the cameras out there, then I don't bring her no more for her scent reasons. But other than that, yeah, and her nose is all over the place. Um, and you'll see her, she'll smell squirrels and stuff on the ground, and she remembers that game. And that's the only thing I've ever trained her to find is squirrels. But other than that, she's just being a dog. I let her run around, and I used to have a GPS collar for her, but she won't get too far out of my sight anymore, so I don't need it anymore. But
Very cool. Yeah, she sounds like a great dog. If she could just bring you a beer, like,
absolutely, and
start.
I just love the time with her. So the training and stuff like that, it really doesn't matter. And like I said, she's learned everything that I've taught her. Anything that I've attempted to teach her, she has learned. Um,
Mhm.
and there was a lot more time when she was in a truck. So a lot of these, other than the squirrel hunting, everything else that she has learned has been from, okay, we stop at the end of the day after 10 hours and get ready to go to sleep while we're outside, and I'm getting out of the truck for a while, stretching my legs and and I'm getting her out to let her play, that's also when I would incorporate the training time. So, 6 weeks at a time of having at the end of my day every day having time to do that and nothing else helped quite a bit.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I'm sure that would be, like, the thing they're looking forward to all day long. They're like,
Yeah. Yep.
bonding time with dad. I love it.
Yep. And swimming.
Uh,
I forgot that habit. She loves swimming too.
oh, she does?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Do you have any lakes or rivers nearby that she goes in? It's
I
cold
do.
there, so
Yeah, in the summertime, there's a few streams and lakes and stuff. So the only time I went during tick season, even though
uh-huh,
she's treated and everything, I don't take her into the woods during the say after like April when the ticks are starting to come out and when the
yeah,
snakes and stuff are starting to come out. But
yeah.
the early spring and all through the fall is time. And I, for most part, I keep myself out of the woods once the seed ticks and all them start coming out because I just don't care to have to deal with that pain either.
Same, man. Same, and, like, finding ticks on your dog is, like, it's a terrible occurrence. Like, it's
Yeah.
not the end of the world, but you're like, "Okay, I gotta be very careful I take this thing out." You gotta drop it in
Yep.
a little vinegar, you gotta, like, do the whole thing.
Yep. Yep. She's on, and that's the other thing. A lot of people didn't understand. I didn't understand it at first either. So she's on Trio,
Huh?
and even though she's on that, until the tick bites her, it's not going to kill it. You know,
Uh-huh.
because it's in the blood and it's not like a flea. I don't know how it affects fleas before, while they're just walking around, but she was getting ticks on her from the house that we moved into, the one you seen the video from. When I first moved in, that
Oh, yeah.
backyard was just out of control. And so ticks and everything had moved up into areas and until I got it treated, she would get ticks on her. And I finally asked the vet, I said, man, she is treated. Why is she getting bit by ticks? And he said, well, you know, the medicine is not going to kill the tick until it bites. It's in the bloodstream. And I didn't think about that. And it's true.
Yeah.
Most of the ticks that I pulled off of her were already dead by the time I found them. But, so then I did the research and the idea is because of how long it takes for the disease to pass to the dog, the medicine will have it killed before that can happen. But at least that's the theory behind it.
Yeah, right? You got, like, ideal and then reality, and sometimes you still find them squirming around, you're like, "Gosh dang it." Like,
Yep.
I got the Australian Shepherd, he's got a lot of hair, and
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
it's you
Yeah.
gotta be
I'm lucky,
careful.
shortly after they bite in, I can find them. One, because she's got so much brown, um,
Yeah.
and the black ones you can see pretty easily. But yeah. So I'll have to work on the whole sequence part, man, and learning that stuff. So let's get into a little bit of the service dog and working dog type differences because I think there is a difference there.
Mhm.
I consider some of the stuff that I taught her more of a working dog type training, not so much service dog. But
Yeah.
one, let's talk about the need for the service dogs in the veteran community, right?
Mhm.
Uh, I'm a firm believer of this, and I have made my every attempt, and so I've had several dog trainers on several service dog trainers on my show
Mhm.
because I want to educate that a lot of times, as I learned myself, that the veteran doesn't necessarily need a service dog.
Mhm.
Um, and the industry is filled full of business people trying to make money. And so this whole paying to go get your dog online emotionally certified and get paperwork so that you can take it to the hotel for free has kind of put a black eye on that as well. So any type of chance that there's money to be made, somebody's going to come up with a way to do it. But do you ever come across that time frame where you realize that the person that's wanting a service dog really doesn't need service dog as much as maybe emotionally support or stuff like that in our industry?
Yeah, I see it all the time,
Yeah.
and I think it's an identity to some people. Some people just want the
Yep.
best thing possible, and, like, the
Yep.
best thing out there is a service dog, like, that's, like, the top echelon, right? There's
Yeah.
also like world agility champion dogs. So I like to start pointing out there's also other
Yep.
ways to be very successful in dog training. You got like obedience competitions. Some dogs do the bite work. Some dogs, like there's also hunting, right? There's all sorts of
Yep.
different things that you could turn your focus towards. And yet I still have people come to me a lot for service dog training.
Yeah.
And I do think it's important that there's an application process and like we really talk about like why you feel like you need a service dog and what are the specific things they're going to help you for, because
Yep.
service dogs, there's lots of potential for they could, like you could pick up a credit card if you were to, if you're in a wheelchair, right, and you need someone to
Hmm.
pick up your credit card when you got it, like that's like that needs to happen, and then they can sometimes give it to the cashier if the ledge is too high. Or deep
Hmm.
pressure therapy is one that helps a lot of people, and just to be able to ground themselves and to feel anchored.
Yep.
Or even interrupting patterns if you have um, some sort of pattern that you don't want to see continue. It's not a resourceful pattern. Your dog could bark at you or could paw at you or could lay on top of you if something needs to keep you more stable. So there's all sorts of things that they could do,
Yep.
and yet not everyone needs those things. So it is being very mindful of, why do you want this dog? Do you want to be the best at something? Because like I'll get you to be the best at something. It may not be the service dog, because again, we got to protect this industry. I do think it's very
Yep.
important too,
I do
to
too.
make sure that there's quality dogs out there that are out there for a reason. And then the people who do just need a dog for more emotional support for therapy, then there's a category for that too. And I think you can still teach a dog to do a lot of these same things and not be a service dog. So I like to teach all my dogs how to do deep pressure therapy. I think it's just cool. I like when my dog asks and sits and I say, okay, hop it up. And then they come and then they can just come lay down and put their front paws on my lap. I think it's comforting for me, you
Yep.
know?
Absolutely.
Um, and then a retrieve, right? You can teach them how to pick up anything. So, like teaching them how to pick up a credit card or a beer or a toy, or like I had just posted a video on my Instagram. The storm came over that knocked over my fence that I just fixed.
Hmm.
It also took our recycling bin and knocked in and spilled all of our empty recycling all over the place. And so instead of me picking it up, I've already taught my dog how to bring me a water bottle. The other two dogs haven't learned that whole process yet, but I was like, all right, bum, like bring me this thing. And he'd go get the water bottle and like he'd jump in and like drop it in the trash can. And these other dogs were watching him and they would go run over to the water bottle. They wouldn't pick it up and bring it all the way, but they were kind of picking it up. And
Hmm.
that's one way of learning. So I think these animals are just amazing. They're brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I too do believe in the service dog industry. So I'm not taking away from anybody that wants a service dog and has a legitimate need for it. But
Yeah,
to get a free night in a hotel or something like that is not the reason to get a service dog. There's people
for
out there
sure.
that legitimately do need it. And and I do believe in the emotional support part of it too. You know,
Hmm.
um, Anne has literally done that for me. I seen an improvement in my life from putting her in that truck with me versus prior to having not having her in that truck.
Hmm.
Um, so truck driving is a very lonely profession, and
Hmm.
I have seen some crazy things since I've been out there. Um, I had a
Crazy thing.
dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have had a dog, but I had a guy come to me that I was watching TV in the truck stop and was out in the truck at the time, and I was sitting there, and he walks up to me and he's like, "Oh, you're a veteran?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, me too." And we talked for a few minutes, and then just randomly he goes, "You want to see my bobcat?" I said, "You talking about like the machinery?"
Huh?
And he goes, "No, I have a bobcat in my truck." And at this point, I'm nervous, man. I'm like, "No, I'm good."
This dude's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it turns out, I guess he has a friend that does something with wild animals, and
Hmm.
he legitimately had a bobcat. It was smaller. It was an adult in his truck. He said
Yeah.
he said, "I don't have bears no more." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I took a couple cubs, man, but they were good while they slept. But once they woke up," he said, "they would tear up everything." And I was like, "Why are you putting bears in your truck?" This guy was out there, man.
He
But
was. Extremely lonely.
Yeah, I said, yeah, I got a dog, man, and I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the ethical things are very interesting. You can get into SeaWorld and also the Tiger
yeah,
King and all these type of things, right? And at the end of the day, there is some sort of need to have a place for animals who are hurt that can't go back into their
absolutely.
environment. That
Yeah,
and there's some cases where animals that are going extinct, you need to do these things. And I think the industry's come a long way in terms of the types of training methods they use. And
yeah,
I do think you domesticating an animal does change them forever. Teaching them to stop chasing squirrels and to like sit and watch them, or to not eat their food at their first impulse, or to not run out the door, that's domestication, and that's rewiring their brain in different ways. And so those things inhibit them from being successful out there sometimes.
yeah,
So you do have to be very mindful about like the animals that you're taking in, and like what you're doing to them. It's very interesting. And yet I recognize that there are people who do it. So the purpose for me is to make sure that people understand there is an elegant way to do all these things. And I think we have
mhm,
come a long way. And yet there's still trainers who do things in a way that I don't agree with,
yeah,
because they get results. And sometimes it's like there's a story of like the kids screaming in the grocery store, and they're screaming their head off. They're screaming your head off. You're trying to ignore them. It doesn't work. Finally, you're like, here, take it. You can have the cereal. You can have the cookie, whatever you want. They stop crying. You stop feeling that pain, and you can breathe again. And
yep,
so that creates a vicious pattern, though. Even though it was successful in getting your kid to stop crying, the repercussions you pay for it later are much worse. And there's some things, some techniques that you can use that that's what happens, right? So we got to be mindful of like the big picture, not just the immediate results of like, I want my dog to sit, so I'm going to push their butt down. No, that's not
yeah,
how you do it. We want them to enjoy sitting, because if you were to do that, you're probably going to hurt their hips. And also, you're not really training anything. The type of leader you're being is you're intimidating, right? I
yeah,
think there's three types of leaders. There's leaders who bribe and incentivize their employees or their dog. But the problem with bribes, I don't know if you've ran into this, but if you don't want the best treat, I'm not
yep,
going to come to you, right? So
yep,
you always have to keep getting better and better treats. It's a never ending cycle. You got fear or intimidation. That's not the type of person I want to be. And as you look at long term studies of that, the dogs end up repressed. And when you repress energy, typically it comes out bigger later and it's
yep,
unpredictable. And so you got problems with that. And then if you dig into like this idea of being the best possible, they've tested dogs who were trained in positive reinforcement versus punishment. And they found that the dogs with positive reinforcement could run faster times because they weren't afraid of failure. The dogs who were constantly like thinking like, oh, if I mess up right now, I'm in trouble, they would intentionally slow down a half a second because they want to make the right decision, which some people, that's like, oh, that's what I want my dog to do. But no, I want my dog to be confidently making decisions and understanding failure is a part of life. And we need to
mhm,
reframe how you view failure. You're not really failing unless you don't learn anything from the
yep,
situation. Um, every time you do something, you're learning and growing. So you're learning and growing. And so is our dog. And I want them to be as confident as possible doing these things. And that's not to say when they make a mistake, you can't go over there and like interrupt the behavior elegantly and like start the behavior over so you don't confuse things. But there is a way to communicate with your dog. You're like, hey, you made a mistake. Like we got to start back over again. Like we can't keep doing this thing. And
mhm,
like teaching them how to do little intricacies of it. I think it's just brilliant to point out that the third level of training is growth, right? You help them grow through things. You're with them, you encourage them, which is what I was kind of describing. You teach them that failure isn't a bad thing. Like we're both learning from this. If you made a mistake, it's probably because you're a reflection of my training. So I need to
yep,
drop the ego and like look at myself and be like, how can I meet you where you're at and make it just a little bit easier? And maybe I'm giving you a high school problem and I should be giving you middle school problems right now.
yep. There's a saying in the Army, what we say is the definition of a soldier is the direct reflection of its leadership.
Mm,
And so that is very true. What you put in is what you're going to get out. And when I first started doing this research as far as how to go about to train, obviously I made the same mistake that I was just talking about with a lot of other veterans. First thing I was searching was how to train my dog to be a service dog, you know, and my dog was, I learned real quick that my dog is way too young for that at that time. And this is not you learn how to sit and now you start being a service dog and start learning those trains. The dog's got to grow to those types of skills. And it
Mhm.
takes years to train a service dog. They're not going to be trained at 6 months to be a service dog. And so by doing that, I did come across a few Instagram pages and stuff like that where I learned. And the biggest thing that I learned was not every day is going to be the day to work on training. There
Yeah.
was days with Anne that no matter what I did, whether it was fence in the area, there was some truck stops we stopped at and just did not feel comfortable in. And all of those types of things, the environment, the training and everything, since how long she'd been in the truck, how energetic she was, some days I would just give up on training and say, okay, today you're just going to be a dog. We're going to let you go play, let you run around, burn some energy, and then we'll head to bed and call it a day and we'll work on it again the next day. And I found that one, I didn't get frustrated when that happened. I just knew that some days it worked, some days it didn't, and we'd both go back to it. And maybe those were mistakes, but it worked great for my temper and how I was feeling and stuff like that as well. But
Yeah.
do you also agree that, sometimes the dogs are just not, their focus is like a little child. Sometimes their day's not on their homework.
Of course.
Yeah.
Totally. I feel like that. Like
Yeah,
before I
me
get
too.
on a podcast, like I get a little bit nervous. I get some days like I'm not up for it, and some days I got to reschedule things. Some days I
Mhm.
got to be like, okay, I need to put myself in a better state and I need to overcome these things. And I think that's the brilliance of dogs is you get to learn both of those lessons. And there's some days where you're just like, yeah, go be a dog. And then there's some days where you have to elegantly work through these challenges together. And it's funny, sometimes dogs will go out and they're like, my dog's so they have no attention, they got no energy, no nothing, right? I can't get them focused on me. And then their squirrel runs by and their dog tail goes up and then they
Yep.
start focusing. And I was like, so is it really that they're uninterested, or is it, I mean, is it really that they can't, or is it like you're just uninterested to them?
Yeah.
And so it is a blend of, yes, for sure. There's I tell people there's two types of walks. There's the walk with like I'm just exercising my dog. They're gonna smell everything. They're gonna go off and do things. And then there's more training walks where we're gonna work on some bigger distractions. There's those balloons. We're gonna work. Oh yeah, see, I'm getting distracted now. It hasn't happened
Yeah.
before.
Me too,
I'm
man. I'm
learning right
loving
now
it.
too. And so there's different types of walks, and I think it's training is a flow. You have to be able to, some cultures they sleep in your bed, some cultures they got to sleep in a crate, some cultures
Yep.
they get to sleep in um, wherever they want. Like it kind of varies, and you got to kind of flow with your dog. I think it's very important. Same with humans, same with
Yep.
kids. Some people
Yep.
aren't huggers. I love to hug people. Some people who don't want to be hugged, I can go up to hug and like, whoa, dude. I don't take it personal. I
Yeah.
just know like we need to build a little bit of rapport. I need to connect and understand their world more
Yep.
before I can like do things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know another hot topic with dog training, and it
Tell me.
seems like when you do this search, I don't know, it almost seems like it's 50-50 between some dog trainers and others. What is your
Huh.
thoughts on e-collars?
Oh, I love it. This is super controversial,
Yes.
and I feel that there are many ways. So there's a book called Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor, and there's
Mhm.
8 ways you could stop a behavior. One of them is you shoot the dog,
Yeah,
right? One of
that
them
would
is
stop
you
it.
divorced your spouse, right? You just get rid of the problem. It's what my family did a lot of the times. They said, I can't fix this thing. We're going to rehome the dog,
Yep.
you know? The other way is you could use punishment, and people have been using punishment for a long time. It's how they started training animals. And no judgment to those people. They were doing the best that they could with the information they had.
Mhm.
And the thing that I talked about with the kids screaming in the grocery store and then giving them a treat, right? It got the behavior to stop, but there's long term repercussions. And that's how I feel about using punishment.
Mhm.
Um, There's negative reinforcement, which sometimes if you go to grandma's house and you take off your shoes and you put your feet up on the table on the counter, she gives you a dirty look and she doesn't
Yep.
stop looking at you until you take your feet off the table, you
Yep.
know? Um, and you could just sometimes just leave a problem alone until it doesn't happen anymore. Those are kind of one section of handling, one chunk. And then the other chunk is you could train an incompatible behavior. You could change the motivation for the dog. You could reward the absence of the behavior. Uh, and so, taking these things into account, there's lots of ways to handle problems, and all of them work, just so like everyone's aware. And people are doing these things all the time. So with e-collars, I people are going to train how they're going to do, and I'm not in the business of punishing people because if I punish them, I'm doing the same thing that some people view that they're doing. You know, they're adding something unpleasant to a dog to stop a behavior, and that's how I
Mhm.
view the electronic stimulation. They're selling online right now these Pavlok things that shock you to like wake up in the morning, or if you want to kick a bad habit. You haven't seen those? It's like a
No, I
little
haven't.
watch. Yeah, they're spending a lot of money on advertising, and but at the end of the day, like yes, there's operant conditioning says there's two reasons why we do things, either to avoid pain or to gain pleasure. And when I told you grandma's rule, you got to finish your broccoli before you get to go play with your friends. There's pain there, right? You
Yep.
want to avoid the pain of not hanging out with your friends, so you're going to do the hard thing. That's just part of life. That's just how life works. There's elegant ways to apply pain, and there's not so elegant ways to apply pain.
Right.
So with e-collars, personally, I stay away from them. People who use them, I stay away from too, but I understand the psychology behind it, and all the psychology is saying, like when the bad quote unquote, because like labels, right? Nothing is good nor bad, but the behavior that you don't want to see repeated occurs, you interrupt that pattern. And people have
Mhm.
different ways of interrupting patterns. You could give them a little vibration, and
Yep.
then if they continue to do it, you give them a little shock, is how they would describe it, you know? And
Yep.
the ranges vary. And I don't know if you ever put it on your neck. There's one joke that I've always wanted to do, like a little skit, because I've taken like improv and like I like the comedy and all this stuff. I was like, what if we like, put this thing on our neck and we act it out like parents and kids, and it's like time to get up for bed and like snooze, and like you get a little vibrate, and it's like time to get up for bed, snooze, and you're like like you would never do it, right? It's just outrageous, even
There was
though it works.
Yeah, it does. There was a couple TikTokers. This has been quite a while. I haven't seen a video for quite some time, but they were friends and they would place bets with each other throughout the week or day or whatever.
Uh-huh.
The loser had to wear a shot collar and they would go through a drive-through and would not stop shocking the person until they successfully got the food from the drive-through window. So at the time of ordering, the guy's like, "I want a Coke and fries," you know, and stuff, all the way up to the point where the people are trying to hand them the food. The guy is getting shocked, and I
Oh
seen
man.
that, and I was like, "Man, that is insane." I don't know how much they were acting that it hurt or it really did hurt or whatever, but I laughed. I thought it was hilarious that somebody was dumb enough to do stuff like, you
Yeah,
know.
I've definitely been. We used to have like an invisible fence in our backyard, and I definitely put the thing on and ran through before. So
Yeah.
it'll get you.
It will, yeah. I'll be honest. So while I was trying to teach Anne for off leash,
Uh-huh.
I did use them. And part of it was because I was teaching her to be off leash in a truck parking area. And I was always afraid that if she seen a dog and tried to take off running and ran out into where the traffic was, bad stuff would obviously happen.
Hmm.
And with that, I did the same thing. It had bells, vibrate, and then shock. And I
Hmm.
would do the bells, and then most of the time, the vibrate scared her more than anything, and
Hmm.
she would listen. And then it got to the point where I didn't need anything but just bells. You hit the bells, she knew that was the boundary of where she was supposed to be. And once she
Yeah.
learned that boundary, she never worried about it again. and now she's to the point where I don't even have to have a collar on her. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I
you
think if
know,
they just remove the shock, a collar like that, but I haven't seen anything like that on the market, which is just bells and vibrate. Like
no,
typically
this
all of
one
them
had
have
shock. It had
what?
shock. I just never had to, after the first couple
I
times.
know. I don't even want it on there though.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
either.
don't even give people the option. Like the
Yeah,
idea is you got to train your dog, and this is what they'll tell you. People who use e-collars, like they're trained to vibrate means something. The shock means something, right? And if you associate to something positive, so like I got to
mhm,
interrupt dogs' patterns sometimes when they're, if they're into the trash can, right? Like, what do you do? Some people say you shock them, right? You could just go help them out of the trash can, right?
yeah,
But the thing is, people get confused is once they do that, once they interrupt the pattern, they just think it's done, right? But if you stop right there, then the dog is just going to replay that song when that trigger happens again.
yep,
And so we need them to learn that when this trigger happens, they play this song, which is to go find a bone instead of eating the Wi-Fi cable, which is to go to your bed and to sleep instead of getting into the trash, whatever you want in your house.
yep,
And then setting up that trigger. So like when the door shuts is a trigger for a lot of the dogs to be like, Dad's gone, like it's time to play.
yep,
So it is important that you once you interrupt that pattern that you do show them immediately what you do. Like when you feel this vibrate, you come running back to me.
yep,
um, and then if you do that, there's really no reason you need the the shock part of it. You just use a long leash to practice at first until you have confidence that your kid is going to come back to you. And then as you do, then you remove the long leash, or you let them drag the long leash rather for a little bit, so you've got some chance. And as you build that confidence, it's like having a kid at Disneyland. There's it's very distracting being around, and you have to teach them how to listen to you even when there's a lot of distractions, which involves desensitizing and doing. I've been to Disneyland thousands of times. To me,
mm,
Disneyland is still fun, but it's not like how some people react where they're like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing in the world. It's like,
yeah,
no, like I know where my favorite rides are. I know when I shouldn't be going on rides. Like I know where the best food spots are. And like that just comes from being out there and doing it over and over again, even when I wasn't the best kid. And sometimes I got lost and they had to announce my name on the speaker. And guess what? I didn't get lost again, because
yep,
that was very painful and very scary for me. So, but there's elegant ways where a dog can lose sight of you. Like if you have a long leash on them and they're kind of wandering around and then you run and hide behind a tree, that's going to set off a thing in them. They're like, oh, I need to find my parents. So I'll play hide and seek with the dog. That's fun. So they're kind of tuned in to be like, oh, I need to be checking in with dad. Kind of like what you were talking about. They only go so far before a bell starts ringing and goes, oh, where's my dad,
yeah,
but they should have the confidence too to be able to wander away and to go explore, and then still come when you call them, which that's the growing part, that's the relationship,
yep.
that's the fun part to me.
And I think also, again, just like you said, so the other thing I would do is when I hit the bells, I always
Hmm.
called her at the same time. So it wasn't that she learned that the bells meant she was going too far. It was
Hmm.
she learned that when I called her, I want you to come back to me.
Yeah.
And that's how I started the training with her. And then the second time, if I called her again, it was with vibrate. And
Hmm.
like I said, 90% of the time, vibrate's enough. That's all it takes because it's a different feeling. They're not used to it and they feel it and it's like, okay, what the hell is that? And
Hmm.
then they come back and try to sort it out that way.
Yeah,
I have seen people use the shot collar for everything. And
for sure.
they're not using any commands. So now the shot caller means I went too far. The shot caller means I'm getting in the garbage. The shot caller means get off the couch. The shot caller, this same command means anything. So if
Hmm.
me and you were having a conversation and every question you asked me, I said, oh, dog. And then you asked me another question, oh, dog, you're not going to get anything out of that because even though I may mean something, I'm saying the same word to you over and over and over again. Well, I think it's the same thing with that shot collar too, or that e-collar is if you're using that for everything, not for one particular thing, you're going to confuse them for that as well. With any training method, whether it be the e-collar, if I'm using the same command, sit means stay, and it also means shake, and it also means a bunch of other stuff, the dog's never going to learn because it doesn't know what you want. You're saying the same command. And
Yeah.
so those bells can't mean I've gone too far, get out of the garbage. sit on the couch, sit on the floor, whatever. I mean, and so I feel like with an e-collar, you are kind of limited because I don't I don't think the dog's learning anything. If you're using it as a training aid, like people swear that's what it's for, is to train. And I seen another guy say that if you can't train a dog without an e-collar, you shouldn't be using an e-collar to train because you're not understanding the purpose of training. And so
Yeah.
I do agree with that too.
That's why I trained a pig to paint,
Right. Yeah.
because you can't use an e-collar on goats, cows, sheep, literally any other animal. If you put it on them, they're not going to listen to you. Like,
Right. Yeah. No,
so if
you're
it
right.
doesn't work in other situations, I don't think it's a valid thing. I think it's got to be universal
Yeah.
in its application.
And the other thing that does scare me about it is um if you go on Amazon and you can get these things for $10, $11, $12,
Yeah.
which means everybody's buying them. And
Hmm.
what people don't understand, I've seen pictures. You can Google these pictures. There's people that leave that collar on the dog like it's their regular collar all day
Uh-huh.
long through the house and everything. And when they malfunction, because any mechanical device, I'm in the maintenance field. I don't care whether it's electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, it can fail. And I've seen dogs that are scarred because it's being shocked because the collar is left on.
Hmm.
And so I definitely have
Yeah.
mixed feelings about it. And I do agree with you 100%. I wish they would make a device where it's just the bells and just vibrate. And I would be perfectly good with that, you
Yeah.
know?
If anyone's listening and they can do that, contact us, because that is something I want to create, and I don't have the resources yet. So
Yeah,
I think, and smells are very important to dogs too. Like, I use a lot
absolutely.
of scents. I use like lavender and other dog friendly scents to either show them like it's time to go to sleep. So before they go to bed, I'll spray some lavender. And then I have a training little mix that I put together. And this is like, focus, pay attention, we're working, right? And so, like, their training vest and their stuff is sprayed with this one, and then their blankets, if they sleep in, is sprayed in the other one. And if you could link up smells to certain behaviors and sounds, and there's so many other alternatives, as well as, you were getting into it, when you're always saying stop getting in the trash, stop barking, stop doing that, and you keep like pressing it, right?
Hmm.
um, Dogs don't understand stop is a concept. And if I were to say to you, Donald, do not, under any circumstance, think of anything yellow. Like, don't think of a banana. Don't think of like a squash. Don't think of anything yellow. Okay.
Hmm.
Don't do it. It's very hard. And I got in trouble at school a lot of times because they'd be like, don't press that button. Knowing me, if you're anything like me, I'm going to go press the fucking button.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go do it. And so, if you, once you repress something for so long, finally someone goes, I don't care, do whatever you're going to do. And like, that happened with me as a kid, being the oldest of six. My mom would yell a lot at us. Like, I spent hours in the corner, man, hours.
Hmm.
And I learned that hours in the corner doesn't change anything. Like, 2 to 3 minutes of a consequence, and then being let out to see what your choice is, and then being consistent with your rules, is much more important than making someone sit in the corner for hours.
Yeah.
But um, yelling and just constantly doing this thing, right? Stopping, it doesn't build any behavior. So you always want to be like, what do I want them to do instead? It's the first step of my dream protocol. It's living in do land. You have to start training your brain. What do I want them to do? And how do I get there? If you catch yourself saying stop, it's the moment that to recognize you're getting frustrated. And when you get furious, get curious and ask,
Okay.
what would I rather have right now?
Yeah. I love the way you tie things together because that is awesome. I've never heard any other trainers because these are perfect for the owner. If you're getting furious, get curious, and I love stuff like that. That is awesome.
Thank you.
A couple other things that I do want to touch. And I
Uh-huh.
and I know we've been going on for a minute, but um,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure I hit everything that you want to talk about as well. But
Uh-huh.
what is your thoughts on CBD for dogs?
Yeah. I'm not a medical doctor or anything to that nature. I think that I've used CBD for dogs before. So that's like my personal experience. I think it can help them relax in certain situations. I'm not a huge fan um, of drugs for myself or for dogs.
Right.
I feel that in some situations they're appropriate in situations and they should be used as something to help bridge the gap between a more complete emotional transformation for the dog. Because if you're having to give your dog the CBD for something, it means they need to relax. And that's either, I don't know, there's a myriad of reasons why. But at the end of the day, I look at it as a bridge, right? It's not a permanent solution in any means, but have I used it? Yeah, for sure.
Man, the
Even
VA,
yeah.
the VA needs to watch this episode too. You hear that, VA? Mental pills are for a bridge, not for the rest of our life.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
No, it is quite wild.
yeah, you are absolutely right. So a few things about Anne. Anne
Yeah, tell me.
is not a super hyper dog. I can keep her controlled, but she
Uh-huh.
does not like thunderstorms and gunshots and large noises that come unexpectedly. So,
Yeah. Wow.
my thoughts has been for maybe some CBD or something like that for during those moments,
Uh-huh.
because she will go to the bedroom and want to hide in the bedroom instead of staying out in the front room. Or if I can get her on the couch, I can cover her all the way up underneath the blankets, and then she's fine that way too.
Uh-huh.
But my fear is this is going to become my dog's super hyper, and I'm going to give it CBD and not work on the training of how do I burn the energy, how do I change the focus,
Mhm.
and all those types of things. So I do have mixed feelings on that too. I do really wish that it was only able to be purchased maybe through a veterinarian, where they
Mhm.
could manage the reasons why you want to do it. But I know that probably will never happen either. And I've seen a lot of knockoff type stuff through Walmart and stuff like that. So I really do.
Yeah, I
I,
think
I have I have mixed feelings about it,
uh-huh.
but I do see the need and potential stuff like that.
Yeah, can I share a story with you of how I help overcome some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I watch a lot of dogs during um 4th of July and different like fireworks occasions.
Hmm.
And it reminds me of a story when I was living in San Diego with my buddy. I was living in Ocean Beach, and it's right next to the San Diego airport. And San Diego is very popular to come to. So there would be airplanes flying over our head like every 15, 20 minutes. And sometimes, like when the airplanes were like just launching in the morning, it'd be like every 5 minutes. It's actually quite impressive the schedules they run on.
Yeah.
And for the first 6 months, it drove my roommate and I crazy. Like we would complain about it all the time. It's all we would think about. We'd be like, oh, there's another one, right? All these things are so annoying. This is like, we got to get bigger curtains. We got to do something to stop. Like we got to turn the movie up louder, whatever it is. We would try to like drown this thing out. But where your focus goes, energy flows. And so we just kept talking about this thing, and it was just still never fun for us. So one day we were having drinks, right? We got to the brewery, we got our growler, and like this plane flew by, and we're just like, cheers, man. And we cheers for the plane. And then it flew by again, another 20 minutes. We're like, cheers, man. 3 hours later, we were pretty drunk, and and every time a plane flew by, we're like, "What's up?" Like, I will always remember that memory. It changed the way I hear it. Every time I hear an airplane now, that story goes off in my head, and I just smile and laugh to myself.
Yeah.
And so with dogs, I try to give them the same experience. I'll get a can of like whipped cream or some like wet dog food, something like really tasty. And every time this fireworks goes off, I'll celebrate and you depending on how scared the dog is how crazy you celebrate. But as you continue to play this game, you keep celebrating more and more because the dog's like, oh shoot, he's gonna go run to the fridge now. We'll pull out the whipped cream and give everyone a little dab of whipped cream, and then he's gonna go put it down and sit down and act like nothing ever happened, just like that. And then
Yeah.
5 minutes later, when the firework goes off, I run over, I go get the whipped cream again. I do this. I do this over and over again all night long. It's kind of like the only thing I do. But by the end of the night, the dogs are like, all right, this is pretty cool. Like, they're
Yeah.
like almost hopeful for fireworks in a sense. And it's important that you know the right leverage for your dog, right? Those dogs like whipped cream. And I also conditioned other fun things to whipped creams too, a couple other games that I play. So they know like when I pull this out, it's really, really special. And so if you have something that's really, really special, something that your dog rarely gets and that they love, and then this thing only happens when this trigger happens, that's the part where you're counter conditioning this emotional response.
Okay.
And uh, it's important though that you have something very valuable though.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I like whipped cream way more than CBD for my dog.
Ah,
So
yeah.
I think
They do
that's
too.
amazing. So earlier in the show, you asked me a question, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't really have the answer at first. You said, "Is there anything that Anne does that you would want to change?" And there is one thing that I've never been able to stop. When she
Okay.
eats, I mean, it is as fast as I can get it down, whether it be her treat, whether it be dinner, no matter what it is, when you give it to her, some stuff, if it's small enough, I don't give her anything small because she won't even chew it. In the
Mm,
mouth, down the hatch. And that would be one thing that I would change. I wish she would slow down and maybe get the opportunity to get full before she would eat, because then she would try to overeat. But
mhm.
that would be the one thing I would change behaviorally for her. But she
Yeah,
is
I
so
might have something.
dependent on food. Treats go a long way with her.
Yeah. Yeah, my dog has a lot of, and when I was first learning to train, I used mostly treats, and then I figured out that toys are also a reward, and then permission just to interact with me is also a reward. And so he became very food driven. And I tried multiple things. Like you can get little puzzles for your dog. You can feed exclusively through training. Sometimes I would just hand feed him every single piece of his food, and only give him like a
Yep,
little bit at the end.
that's
And
what I did.
and some of those things, not all of it, like helped. It helped obviously. Um, and it's interesting. I think about like binge eating in a sense, right? Like I've been very overweight before. I've struggled with like eating things. I love candy, and um I've been listening to something that was talking about this idea of scarcity and how there's a lot of artificial scarcity out there and sales and all sorts of stuff. Like you may never have this thing again. And when you go into a diet, it's like, oh, you can't have lasagna anymore. You can't have
Mhm.
candy anymore. You can't have these things anymore. And so what that does is it builds this tension of like, you can't have it. And what did I tell you about that thing? You're just
Yep,
constantly thinking about the next time you can have it. And
yep,
so in your brain, you think there's scarcity. You think like, I'm not going to get this thing, so I need to eat it. And my thing was I'd eat this candy as fast as I could because then I don't have it in the house anymore. And then I don't got to think about it anymore. So the faster I get rid of it, the faster it's good. But it's not a very good pattern because then I would be like, later, I'd be like, oh, I want another box. And like I'd have the
yep,
same mentality. I was just eating a lot of candy. And so just hiding it didn't do much for me because it required a lot of discipline. And then I learned this technique of living in abundance and realizing that you can say like, of course I can have it, I'm going to eat it tomorrow. And then when tomorrow comes, you go, it's there tomorrow too, I could have it tomorrow. And it reminds me of a story. I went out and I bought like 30 boxes of these candies because I really, really wanted them. And I was like stockpiling. They had grape flavor, they had their tropical flavor. I like all of their flavors, man.
mhm.
And the first day I went in there and I opened up the cabinet and I saw all of them. I'm like, this is heaven, right? I grabbed a box, I ate all of it. I ate like three-fourths of it. I saved a couple for later, so I didn't feel terrible about myself and I put it in there. Um, and then I went back a few hours later, and a couple other boxes had been opened and eaten by people around me. And then like I finished my box, and then I went the next day. And the next day, I was like, man, I ate a lot of Zowers. I don't want that much today. Like I'm gonna eat a little bit less of them. Uh, and then I went and a few hours later, I came back and like I saw them. I was like, oh, those are good. Like I'd rather have something else right now. Like my teeth are kind of hurting a little bit. Like my mouth is like all like my tongue's all torn up. The
Yeah,
next day I go over there, they're still sitting there. I was like, "Ah, I don't really want them anymore. Like I'll have them tomorrow. Like they're always there. I'll have it tomorrow." And so I tell you this story just to show that this idea of scarcity and abundance runs in everyone. And our dogs have it too. So with my dog, he was eating really fast. And I did this years ago with him, like 3, 4 years ago. I gave him as much food as he wanted to eat. And I just kept filling his bowl and kept filling his bowl. And I did this for 3, 4 days. and he ate a lot, and then he learned that, like, bro, I have all the food. This food can continue to come as much as you need it to. There is no shortage of food. I give you treats. I do all these things with you. And after 3 4 days, he realized that, like, oh, I don't gotta eat my food as fast, because, like, he just keeps, and I made sure I was obnoxious about it. Like, he would get halfway done with his bowl and think he was gonna finish the end, and I would just fill the thing back up. And he'd look at me and be like, and he would start eating again. He'd get halfway and I fill it back up again. And he'd be like, he almost got defeated. He's like, I can't, he would just leave his bowl half full because he's like, I can't eat anymore. And like, he was got a big belly, and we had to do lots of exercising the next few weeks to kind of work it off. He pooped like 7 or 8 times. He pooped more times than I've ever seen him poop before in his life. But after a week of just having all the food he could, he was like, I get it. Like, I don't want to eat as much food. And he's slowed down. He still eats his food relatively fast, but not nearly as fast as how he used to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the one trait that I would like for her to change, because I just wish she would chew it, and instead of gulping it all down and then looking at me like I'm ready for more,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try that. We'll try that and see how that works.
Just be aware of the poop. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very interesting. But it is a counterintuitive way to train, because most people are like, I need to hand feed my dog every time and make it slower and slower. But that almost builds more drive for the dog, because they're like, I want to keep playing. I want to keep playing. And then they're not really getting that satiated feeling, because you've broken up their meals in so many small pieces that, like, their body's processing it, And by the time they're done, they're like, where's the rest of my meal? And it's like, bro, you ate the whole thing already. And
Yeah.
so then they're just looking forward to the next training session. So it's counterintuitive in a sense.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Well, I know I've asked you a ton of questions. Is there any topics that you want to get before we go into your plugs and everything, that how people can find you?
I think this has been absolutely wonderful. I think there's lots of nuggets here. I hope people did, like, celebrate and pat themselves on the back for just being here listening. Maybe took some notes, re-listened to it if something really stuck out to you, because I guarantee you not everything will stick with every person, and I get that. My culture doesn't match with everyone, but if there's one or two things that you can take for it, I implement those, see how it feels, and let me know how it goes. You can find me on Instagram at ND Dog Training. I'm posting content on there frequently now. And you can also go to my website, newdirectiondogtraining.com, and I have a free PDF guide to get your dream dog. I only explain one of the D's, which is to live in do land. But there's 4 more steps that, if you follow these things, you'll be able to map out a plan for your dog. So you can download that guide for free, and then watch another podcast that I did that goes a little bit deeper into that. And then I got more resources for you on the other side. But I hope to see you on the other side. And whatever it is, if you want your dog to listen better, or if you want a working dog, or wherever you want to go with your dog, if you want to do agility, I'm here to help you. So I'll see you next time.
All right, man. Well, if you don't mind, I'll put you back in the green room, and I'll be with you in a second, and we'll go ahead and end everything out, man. I appreciate you being on, brother.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man.
All right, man. I'll be with you in a minute. All right, everybody. I hope that you got something out of this. I know I did. I've seen some of the mistakes I made, some of the things I did great. And I think that at the end of the day, I think all of us can learn that not only is there's things that we can teach the dogs, but there's things that we can learn from them as well. So I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope you stick around for the next episode next week. Y'all take care, be safe, and we'll see you next week.